welcome back to our video series on building a red team cyber range lab. In a previous video, we did build the forest route for our lab, and in this video, we are going to continue with the progression, and the next task is to build child domain, right? So this is how it is going to look like for the primary domain controller for the child domain. The domain name is going to be gh.afro.local, and these are the specs for the server and the services that would run on it. So let us jump right into the configuration and the setups. Okay, so we will begin with the domain controller, which we named as ghdc01. And I went ahead and installed the services that we would need, or the roles we would need to have this running as a domain controller. And I skipped that in the video because we had done that previously on how to promote this PDC01 into domain controller. The only difference that you see here is I added the WSAS, and that automatically added the IIS server to it. So again, you don't need to do that, but these are the three services which I configured, I installed on this server. I also named it appropriately, so you should also consider that. And also for the Ethernet or the network connection, I have that also set up. But before I get back here, I did make a small change to the virtual network editor. So if you remember in our previous video, when we did create these subnets, we're getting IP addresses from the DHCP server settings, right? So for the gateway, it was okay for our first devices which connected to this virtual network should be issued an IP address by the DHCP setting. So what I did was, because each domain or forest is going to have its own DHCP server, there was no need for us to have this virtual network issuing IP addresses, but we hand over that responsibility to each DHCP server from each domain to issue new IP addresses for any machine that connects to the domain or joins to the domain, right? So that is why. So you can uncheck these for all of these three. All right, and you should be good. Okay, so let's click OK. And then back to the server. So let me show you what my setup is for the network. So first of all, we connected that to the GH interface, which is right here. And I turned off the IPv6, went to IPv4, and this is a current setup. If you look at our PowerPoint presentation and the overview of the server, the IP address is 172.100.2.10, and then the subnet and the gateway points to the IP address of the gateway we built previously. And we are assigning the preferred DNS server to the forest domains DNS server. For now, we'll make some changes once we have done the post domain join stuff. Okay, and we have the 127.0.0.1, which is basically the server itself, because it is also going to be a domain. It's going to be a DNS server. Okay, so that is it. Okay, so like the normal notification, once you have installed the services, there are some post deployment configuration we need to do. I did that already for the DHCP and WSAS. It was easy to do that. So the next one, which is more of importance, is now we are going to promote the server to a domain controller and join it to the forest. So let's click on promote. And we are, again, this should look familiar. We are presented with three deployment operations. In this case, because now we have a forest already, we are going to join this machine as a child domain. Now, once you select the second option, add new domain to an existing forest, you are going to be presented with two options here. Now, let me take a brief moment. Now, I didn't want to do this, but let me take a brief moment and explain what is going on here when it comes to these selections. So, within the context of a forest, a domain is what we classify as, let's say, a container. So a forest can have several or plenty or so many containers or so many domains. In a real engagement or any red, pen test or red teaming, you come across organizations which might have more than one child domain, right? Now within each of the domain or the container are what we call objects. Now objects can be anything like users, computers, or whatever it is, right? Within that container or within that domain, each one of those resources or objects trust themselves, okay, to use resources. Now, the moment a domain is joined to a forest, automatically we create what we call a two-way transitive trust relationship. What it means is now the objects within that container or within that domain have trust relationship with the resources within the forest domain. Again, depending on authorization, controls and stuff like that. Okay, there are several types or kinds of trust. Now, for the selection, when a domain is being joined to a forest, there are two types. We have the child domain and we have the tree domain join. The child domain, let me just briefly give you few points that distinguishes each one of these, between these two, types. When you join a container or a forest, or a domain to a forest as a child domain, the trust is called parent-child trust. When you join a domain to a forest as a tree domain, the relationship becomes tree root relationship or trust relationship. They will still have the same relationship, but that is what is classified or is called. The next key point is, and this is where the distinction becomes very clear, when the domain is joined as a child domain or parent domain relationship, you are only allowed, or we only have enterprise admin group within the forest only. The child domain, the highest form of group you have may be the domain admins group. There will be no enterprise admin group within the child domain or the parent-child relationship. On the other hand, if the relationship is a tree root relationship, the child domain or the domain that you join into the forest can actually have its own enterprise admin group. Another distinction is when you have a relationship as a child parent-child connection, the child takes the full namespace of the forest domain. What that means is, in this case, the namespace for the forest is afro.local. When we join through the child domain, this is going to be the domain name, which is going to be here, .afro.local. However, if we choose the tree domain, the domain itself, the new domain can pick any domain name it wants. It doesn't have to use the parent's namespace. So these are the three distinctions when it comes to picking or selecting one of these types. In this case, for our sake, we are going to use the child domain option. Now, before we can join it, we need to authenticate using an enterprise admin privilege from the forest domain, so we can join this machine to the forest as a child domain. Okay, so we have the administrator account, which has enterprise admin privilege, and this is how we would authenticate to it. And if everything goes okay, it will automatically pick up the parent domain name for us. And now we are going to specify our new domain name, which is going to be the GH. It can be any name you want, but it's going to be this name.afro.local. Okay, and then we'll click next, and if everything goes successfully, it should move us to the next phase. Okay, so we are here and we are going to determine the domain functional level. Let us pick, let's say, the Windows Server 2012. Okay, we have the DNS server pre-checked. We can uncheck this, or we can leave it as it is. We will leave it as it is, right? And it also picked up the site name. Now, this is something that you were not aware of, so let me go back and show you a quick update I did to the primary domain controller, or the forest. Okay, and it shouldn't be too much of work. You can do it, and it wouldn't affect anything. So if you go to tools and you go to Active Directory sites and services, I did make a small change or modification to that information, adding a site and also a subnet. So if you first come here, you are not going to have this. You would actually have this, but it will not be the parent. It will be something else, but you can just right click on it and then rename it to the parent's name. Okay, now you can just right click on sites and add a new site. Okay, in this case it can be GH, and then click on default IP site link and click OK, and that will add a new site for you, which is going to be this or whatever you want to add. And also I also added subnets. Again, this was not done in a previous video, but you can choose to do that here. If you right click on that, you can actually add a new subnet, and you would have to provide it with whichever you want, but the most important thing is you have a selection of sites here that you can link the IP block to that. So in this case, if we chose the 172.100.2.0 by 24, then we can select the GH because that is what it corresponds with, and then you can click OK, and you can do the same thing for the parent as well. Okay, so now back to the child domain. Let us provide the password for DSRM. Let's see. Oops. And click next, and this is going to also create DNS delegation, and it's going to use our credentials from the enterprise admin. We'll click next, and it's going to pre-populate the NetBIOS domain name for us. Okay, so we have GH, and we'll click next. Click next, and these are everything that we have selected so far. So we'll click next, and it's going to do a prerequisite checks for us to see if we have everything, we've met all the prerequisites. Okay, we have a green check mark, so let's see if the installation goes on successfully. This might take some time, so I am going to pause this video and I'll be right back once the installation is completed. Okay, so it looks like the installation is successful and we are being requested to restart the computer. So we'll be right back once this is done. Okay, so welcome back. The machine took some time to reboot, and as you can see, now we are going to log in as the into the child domain as the admin. So let's try to log in. Okay, so we are in. Let's confirm a few things. So we go to tools and go to Active Directory users and computers. Okay, And now we have the child domain is here, gh.afro.local, and let us select computers. There's nothing there so far because we haven't joined any machine to this domain. But if we click on the domain controllers, we will see that we have the GHDC01 and a global catalog, and the site is GH. Okay, so let's make a slide change to the Ethernet interface. So we would right click, go to properties, IPv4, and we are going to add the Forest DNS server as the alternate DNS server and close it. Let us refresh this. Okay, and let's try and see and ping the host name for the primary domain controller, the Forest domain controller. So ping and pdc01.afro.local. Okay, got a connection back. We got a response back, which is a good sign. From the Forest DC, let's see if we ping the child domain. If we do ping, and that was GHDC01.gh.afro.local. Good sign. We can now confirm that these two machines can talk to each other. Now we can confirm that we have actually successfully joined a child domain to the Forest. These next steps may not be necessary on your part, but I figured maybe I should just add it in. Maybe some of you might find it useful, and that will be doing some work on the DNS side. So let's go into Tools, DNS, and when we get here, we are going to add what we call conditional forwarders. So when we do that, we just right click and then select the new conditional forwarder, and we are going to provide it with the root domain name. Okay, so that, and then we are going to provide a DNS of the root Forest, which is 10.10.2.0, I believe. All right, and then we will just hit enter. Normally this should be able to resolve to the fully qualified domain name should be able to resolve to a name here. It couldn't, but no worries. So we'll just maybe reduce this number of seconds before forwarding request timeout. So we'll just make it 2 and then click OK. All right, now if we actually go to reverse lookup, we don't have anything yet. We'll come back here. Now when we go to forward lookup, we only have one for the GH domain, right? So what we need to do is how can we get the Forest to also have a forward lookup zone information here. So that is where replication comes in, right? So let us head back to the primary domain controller on the Forest side, and let's go into Tools. Let's go into AD Sites and Services, and let's expand site. We have GH and parent. Let's expand it. Let's expand servers, and we can see that we have our GHDC 01 here. We have NTDS settings, and then let's expand the parent as well. Okay, when we click on the NTDS settings, we can see that replication is actually has an entry here, right? So let's just right click and do replicate now. Okay, We'll click OK on that. Now, if we go to here, we can do the same. Now, in case if for your first setup, if you click and nothing shows up here, you can always right click and then go to all tasks, and you can just do check replication topology. Okay, and that should be okay for you. And then you can just right click and then replicate now. Okay, I hope this doesn't mess up since I'm repeating it. But in any case, so yeah, let's check it and then we'll do replication. Now this is going to take some time when the replication happens. Okay, so if we go back to the child domain and sorry, let me refresh here. Okay, everything is actually done. Refresh here and let's close out from the forest. Let's close this out as well, and then I get back here and I refresh. So nothing is going to show up here. So what is going to happen is it may take up to, let's say, about 5 minutes. But what we will see here is we'll see something which is going to have an entry for I think it's going to be underscore MSDC, something like that, which is going to point to the forest domain. All right, so after some time pass, I will say maybe about 3 to 5 minutes, the replication now worked. So now we can have both of the forward lookup zones showing for the ms underscore msdcs.alpha.local, which is from the primary or the forest domain, and then we have the gh.alpha.local, which is now working. So that completes the whole process of joining the child domain to the forest root. Let us do one more thing that we would normally do, is to create at least one user. So let's go to tools, AD users and computers, and I am going to add a new user here. User, and it's going to be Patrice Lumumba, and going according to the naming convention from our forest is going to be PLUM. Okay, and click next, and never expires for the sake of this work. And let's choose a strong password. Click next. Okay, so now we have a user created. And I think I am going to stop this particular video here, and we will, in the next video, we will try to join a machine to this new child domain as well, to make sure that we are able to connect a machine to this domain. Thank you so much. If you like this video, I would encourage you to leave a comment, a feedback, anything that you think can help me make these videos better. And also do subscribe and turn on your notification, so that whenever there's any new video, you'll be first to hear about it or know about it. Thank you so much. You have a nice day. Bye bye.